Federal government rejects U.S. designation of Nigeria as a country that tolerates violation of religious freedom.
Central Bank of Nigeria slashes charges for some bank services in revised guidelines.
Inspector General of Police orders tight security nationwide for the Yuletide.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss the role of technology in Nigeria's electoral process.
Now, the electoral process in Nigeria has always thrown up challenges of malpractice, violence, ballot box snatching, litigations, overvoting, inconclusive elections. This is just to mention a few. And of course, the list is endless, Kirian.
You're quite right, Rhoda. Preparations for elections in Nigeria is like preparing for a battle. And even though we say it is not a do-or-die affair, in most times it turns out to be a do-or-die affair among politicians.
And of course, incidences of electoral violence and ballot box snatching, for instance, have led to many clamoring for the deployment of technology in our electoral process. If only it will eliminate the chain of malpractice and violence that characterize the electoral process, and that's towards improving it.
Well, invariably, technology can minimize, if not eradicate, those electoral malpractices. Because just a few weeks ago, Britain called for election, and it took place within a month.
And some people didn't even know that Britain did an election.
Exactly. And of course, talking about improving the electoral process in Nigeria, the closest we have gone in deploying technology in our electoral process is the introduction of the smart card reader to verify the identity of voters, as well as the use of permanent voter cards, PVCs, which were deployed in 2015 and 2019 general elections and other off-season polls.
And despite the use of these digital tools, the electoral process is still not bereft of challenges, generating a crescendo of voices now clamoring for the full deployment of technology in the electoral process, such as the introduction of electronic voting.
Now, many Nigerians really look forward to voting from the comfort of their homes, if that is possible, and if it will eliminate the fear of violence in polling units and perhaps discourage voter apathy, which has also characterized our electoral process. India, for instance, which boasts of close to 1 billion voters, uses the portable and durable electronic voting machines, which are also in use in the US and some other Western nations.
And interestingly, the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, is one of those saying e-voting is overdue in Nigeria. But of course, the legal framework is required to remove all the encumbrances and pave way for full deployment of technology in our electoral process.
And let's not forget that there are two sides to every coin, as every system cannot be totally free from manipulation. So what role can technology play in enhancing our electoral process? Is Nigeria ripe for e-voting? And what role can technology play in the transmission and collation of results, which have generated a lot of hue and cry in terms of credibility? From many quarters, of course, Rhoda, the experience that we've had in 2015 and 2019 elections indicate that apart from deploying card readers and other form of technological process, we still experienced heavy or massive manipulations between the from the polling unit, from the calculation center, and of course the results.
And and these are areas where a lot of people are actually saying we need to pay more attention. If we've been able to deal with the issue of voting, as in using card readers, to remove some level of malpractice in the system, between the process of collating the result, transmitting the results, finally getting to Abuja, the INEC headquarters, a lot of people say a lot of things happen in that process, and all of this needs to be eliminated for us to have a very smooth and seamless system. Well, those are pertinent questions and a lot more with which we shall engage our guests later as we discuss the role of technology in Nigeria's electoral process on Good Morning Nigeria. I'm Rhoda Anonam, welcoming you to the program, and we are live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority from Abuja, Nigeria's capital city. And I would say season's compliment. Happy holidays. Some people have begun.
Already. Yes, I am Kirian Umaya. We are glad to have you here this morning. Also welcoming you to this show. And of course, in the course of the program, we will bring you our complimentary segments, which will include newspaper review, business polls, and others. For now, let's join our colleague Ifoma Ojenta for the morning news. Good morning, Ifoma.
Good morning, Rhoda and Kirian. Good morning, Nigeria, and here is the morning news. The federal government has rejected the U.S. designation of Nigeria as a country that engages in or tolerates severe violations of religious freedom, saying the iniquitous tag stems from an orchestrated narrative that has long been discredited. In a statement from the Office of the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, the minister says Nigerians enjoy unfettered freedom to practice their religion and blamed failed politicians and disgruntled elements for latching onto religion as their trump card, especially in the run-up to the last general elections to oust the Buhari administration. The minister said the Nigerian government is acutely aware of how the political opposition in particular had spared no resources in deriving political capital from various security challenges in the country. On the El Zazaki issue, which was referred to in the report by the U.S. government, the minister described it as a purely criminal matter, which has been handled by a court of competent jurisdiction. The minister said, while the government welcomes constructive criticism from any quarter, it rejects any attempt to sow the seed of mistrust among the various religious groups in the country. Meanwhile, the Buhari Media Organization has described the arrest of former Attorney General and Minister of Justice, Mohammed Aduke, SAN, by operatives of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, on arrival from Dubai, as an indication that there is no hiding place for politically exposed persons who have questions to answer on their activities while in office. In a statement, the group noted that Aduke's arrest by the EFCC would help shed light on issues surrounding the controversial grant of the oil prospective license 245 to Shell and ENI during the Goodluck Jonathan administrative years. The federal government is reviewing its strategies towards ensuring the sustenance of the gains achieved so far in the National Social Investment Program, which the government identifies as having lifted close to 5 million Nigerians out of poverty. This is a reason for a one-day interaction between the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development with the state focal persons of the program.
Aforementioned programs are some of Mr. President's strategy to lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty. The present administration from the onset made investments in our people, which is one of the key goals of the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan.
The Central Bank of Nigeria has reviewed downward most charges and fees for banking services in a new guide to charges by banks, other financial and non-financial institutions with effect from January 1st, 2020, and calls on members of the public to acquaint themselves with the revised rules. Director of Corporate Communications to the Apex Bank, Isaac Okorafor, explained some of the major highlights of the new guide released on Sunday, to include removal of card maintenance fee on all cards linked to current accounts, a maximum of 1 naira per 1,000 naira for customer-induced debit transactions to third parties and transfers on lodgement to the customer's account in other bank on current accounts only. Other revised rules include reduction in the amount payable for cash withdrawals from other banks, automated teller machines, and 65 naira to 35 naira after the third withdrawal within 1 month, an advance payment guarantee, which is now pegged at maximum of 1% in the first year and 0.5% for subsequent years on contingent liabilities. The new guide stipulates a one-off charge of 1,000 naira to the issuance of cards, irrespective of type, and no charge shall be required for prepaid card loading or unloading. Unstructured supplementary service data charges purchased with cash back will attract a charge of 100 naira per 20,000 naira, subject to a cumulative 60,000 naira daily withdrawal, while maintenance fee on cards linked to savings accounts has been reduced to a maximum of 50 naira per quarter. Account maintenance fee will henceforth not be applicable to savings accounts, and the guide stipulates a penalty of 2 million naira per infraction, or as may be determined by the CBN from time to time, for financial institutions that breach any provision of the guide. And to security matters, the Inspector General of Police, IGP Mohammed Adamu, has directed the Assistant Inspectors General of Police and Commissioners of Police in charge of zonal and state commands nationwide to ensure that no stone is left unturned towards effectively implementing appropriate crime prevention strategies before, during and after the festivities. In a statement, the Inspector General of Police calls for effective deployment of both human and material assets of the force in protecting the major highways, recreational centers, motor parks, places of worships, financial institutions, and government-private infrastructures, among others. The IGP strongly wants police operatives, especially those detailed to man the highways, to desist from all forms of misconduct and abuse of the rights of the citizenry, as well as adhere strictly to lay down rules and standard operating procedures of the force. And to ease the provision of consumables to troops in the northeast, the Nigerian Army has developed a solar-powered mobile bakery.
All the bakeries in the field, in the northeast in particular, have been shut down or vandalized. So we decided to bring back into this research in collaboration with the DICON and the CED to come up with a unit that is mobile, that doesn't require any fixed structure, that can serve other purposes and provide the necessary things we require, particularly the bread and other pastries like meat pie and any other thing that the troops would need as far as baking is concerned.
19 inmates have been granted freedom at the Kuje Area Council Correctional Facility by the Presidential Committee on Correctional Reforms and Decongestions. This brings the total number of inmates released across the country to more than 4,000. The release of the inmates is part of government's effort at decongesting and reforming the correctional service to serve its purpose of integrating inmates into the society.
For over 2 years in prison. All they are telling me of getting stories. For hearing implication files, the reason I don't know how long will you wait to be able to get a.
The significant thing about especially two of them that were released is that two of them, they have spent 13 years each.
And those are the news highlights for now. The program continues with Kirian and Rhoda after this break. I am Ifoma Ojinta. Good morning.
All right, you're welcome back. And if you've just joined us, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the NTA. Coming up next is Business News with Kolo Muhammad.
The year 2019 has been a year of innovation and inclusion in the national business segment. For the first time in a long while, the country has returned to the January to December budget timeline, as after the submission of the 2020 appropriation bill by Mr. President in October, the National Assembly deliberated upon it and passed it. Now it has been signed into law by the President. Deliberate efforts are on to surge formal financial inclusion in rural Nigeria. On its path, the federal government's social investment and inclusion encourages rural community dwellers to open and operate bank accounts into which stipends are paid. These include trader money and power, market money, conditional cash transfer, and school feeding funds. This has infused the grassroots and the grasstops to create an avenue for sustainable interface at the community level. Stakeholders say more needs to be done if this success is to reach many more people.
I sincerely want to believe that the government of the day still needs to do more on that aspect. The financial institutions needs to do more in terms of carrying each and everyone along in their own operations. If you go to places like the villages, there are certain places where you don't even see a sign of a bank. And as a result, such people may not really understand what it means to be part of the bank's operations.
The week's activity on the floor of the Nigerian stock market opens today. And as always, NTA Business News will bring you closing figures subsequently. And those are the notes upon which we open our business reportage for this week. Be with you again soon.
That's Kolo Mohammed with the business package. We appreciate that. Now, next is newspaper review.
All right, it's our newspaper review segment, and Bayo is not here this morning. But then we'll just run through the dailies that we have with us. Of course, let you know what stories are trending on the papers this morning. And if you have any interest in, any of the stories, you can pick up some of those dailies. So let me begin with the Daily Sun. The Daily Sun this morning, just beside the nameplate, it says Yuletide. Nupeng expresses fear for fuel scarcity. Nupeng expresses fear for fuel scarcity. I'll come back to just talk about that a bit. Because there are reasons why they are expressing that fear, not because there's no fuel, but for some reasons, just as I said, I'll come back to that. Below the nameplate, you have it there. Presidential Committee releases 19 Kuje Correctional Center inmates. That's on page 38 of the Daily Sun. And the big story this morning on the Daily Sun is federal government attacks U.S., accuses country of sowing seeds of religious mistrust in Nigeria, to discuss areas of concern. And then we have nothing to say now, says U.S. government. That's on page 6. That's the lead story, and those are the two riders to read. And the picture story, of course, on the Daily Sun this morning is that of travelers. The Christmas fever is everywhere. You can see vehicles overloaded already, people with lots and lots of bags just going back home to have a good time. It's a holiday season, going back home to have a good time with family. It's what you find all over the world, Kirian. And just below the picture story there, quickly, CBN slashes ATM withdrawal fee to 35 naira, abolishes card maintenance fee. I'll come back much later to talk about that. That's good news. It's something that we had just talked about, it's up to 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago. We had CBN here, and of course we call their attention to all the charges that Nigerians have to go through in terms of trying to make transactions, and it's good to know that this has been done. Give us Leah Sharibu as Christmas gift. Northern Christian elders tell Buhari. That's on page 43. Gunmen kill 8 SAC senators community as insurgents killed to abduct 3 in humanitarian workers attack. That's on page 4 and 5. Those are the stories trending on the Daily Sun this morning. All right, Kira,
I think there are interesting stories there.
Very
First
interesting.
of all, talking about Nupeng expressing fear about impending scarcity of fuel. And I'm not sure the reasons they gave, but for them to start...
No, part of the
raise
reasons,
that concern now.
Part of the reasons that they give, just as I said earlier, that I was going to talk about, it was that there is the product is available. The issue that they're having is that on the Tinkan, the port area, there are lots of containers, and so their members take as much as 1 week, 2 weeks to load. And what they're saying is they need the federal government to intervene in terms of clearing those containers, those trucks with containers out of the way, so that their members can load and leave the point of loading as fast as possible. That if this is not done, then probably they might have issues getting products to filling stations. That's the issue.
That's the issue
but then there is fuel. Fuel is available.
Now, the availability of fuel can only be determined when the end users, have access to that. But what I'm wondering about is why should it be now that this congestion you're talking about will now be a thing of concern? It's always been there. We've talked about the grid in the ports there, and the government has been making a lot of efforts in that direction. But why is it now that they're beginning to tell us about the concern to have a feeling of being afraid of fuel scarcity during this Yuletide? I hope it doesn't come, really. I hope it doesn't come.
Of course.
Another story you read out here is that of the U.S. Tagging Nigeria, a country that allows the violation of religious practice. But that is not completely true. Nigeria is a country where we have different types of religions, Christians, Muslims, even traditionalists who operate in this country religiously. And I wonder why they took up that issue to tag a nation like Nigeria.
But it's so diverse in terms of religion, and there's freedom of anybody can practice whatever religion you want to.
We've never had any religious war here in Nigeria, so I wonder why.
And the Minister of Information has actually addressed that yesterday and released a statement about that.
Not just the Minister of Information, even the SCAs to the president, on media and publicity, they've also responded to that, saying that, look, US cannot just be the police of the world. Okay, let's turn to Daily Trust newspaper for this morning. Below the nameplate, we have CBN calls, well, first read it now. Daily Sun calls ATM withdrawal charge to 35 naira from January 2020. 1 in 5 Nigerians involved in vote buying, that is on page 13. Federal government rejects religious freedom violation tag. Yes, we just discussed that. It's on page 3 of the Daily Trust newspaper. And the lead story this morning on the Daily Trust newspaper is 2,288 graduates with first-class degrees in 2019. 2,288 graduates with first-class degrees in 2019 as employers look beyond grades. And of course, at the bottom of the Daily Trust newspaper, we have Wike played role in PDP loss in Bayelsa, says Dixon. It's on page 14. 4 aid workers killed, 2 others abducted in Brunei. That's on page 4 of the Daily Trust newspaper. Now, rather, 1 in 5 Nigerians involved in vote buying. Our major topic this morning is discussing how technology can assist us. Yes, of course, ensuring that we don't go through rigorous elections that turn out to become a bad omen to us. 1 in 5 Nigerians involved in vote buying. In fact, from the experience we had, recently, apart from the 2019 election, of course, the off-cycle election that we had in Ekiti, that was prominent, vote buying. And it has also metamorphosed into a larger base during the 2019 elections, because of course vote buying was reported in almost all parts of the country.
All parts of the country. Here, one interesting story, just as you read earlier, is that of the CBN slashing ATM withdrawals to 35 naira. I know that about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, we had the CBN, and of course those that have a role to play in this, and we drew their attention. We had people sending tweets, and before we discussed that topic, that was an issue that a lot of Nigerians were talking about, and we're clamoring to see a change in that area. Of course, they're trying to deepen financial inclusion. Everybody should have access to it, but the charges was one thing that was beginning to be a barrier to that goal. And we talked about the fact that after 3 withdrawals you had to pay 65 naira per withdrawal, and if you calculate that a month, that's a lot of money. Card maintenance fee, if you make deposits, lots and lots of charges. But it's good to know that just yesterday the CBN has released a new guideline from January 1st, 2020. Downwards review. But one thing we said to them is, by the time CBN pegs and say, okay, the maximum is 35 naira, I bet you most banks wouldn't want to go below that.
But what's interesting as well is that they've already said, look, that if you go against this regulation, there's going to be sanctions. And of course, about 2 million naira, if...
but I think that's even too small. Although they said they have other, penalties too to it that they would
I think the CBN step is in the right direction, because not only that they charge you after every transaction, at the end of the month, they will still charge you give you monthly charges.
Card maintenance fee, then I don't know, I don't want to be so specific, 50 or 60 naira per month. Now it's about 50 naira per quarter. And that's good. A lot of other changes that have been made that I think a lot of Nigerians will be happy about, and know that, some people are doing their jobs, somewhere.
All right, let's take the editorials for this morning. It's from Blueprint newspaper, Blueprint on the page 12, actually, and it is on need to expedite action on food hygiene bill. Well, about 2 or so years ago, eminent Nigerians expressed serious concerns over the delay in passing the bill for an act for the establishment of Nigerian Food Hygiene Inspection Council, now before the National Assembly. Rhoda, from my understanding of this, I think the editorial is actually calling on the National Assembly to stop that bill and act on it with some speed, so to speak, because we have hawkers on the streets of Abuja and in every city in this country, hawking food items and fruits without paying attention to the hygienic aspect of such sales. And they're saying that, look, that these items are exposed to harmful agents like flies and other bacteria. So the editorial is asking the National Assembly to please pass the bill so that those who are the matrons or patrons of such food businesses should be able to be controlled or have some regulations. I was also advising that they have to work hand in hand with the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, to ensure safe meals for the citizenry. So that's all the focus of the editorial this morning.
And that's a good one if you ask me, because a lot of people have come down with food poisoning, and some other diseases, from eating foods that have been exposed like that. So passing that bill would go a long way to, to reduce that, if not, eliminate it, but at least it would reduce that. All right, those are the stories trending on the front page of the papers this morning. We thank you for being there for our newspaper review segment. Of course, we will be going to our discussion segments. We're looking at the use of technology for our election. But then we have our guests who are here and in other parts of the country who will be joining us shortly on this conversation. We'll take a break now. When we come back, we'll continue. Welcome back, and you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria. For our conversation segment this morning, we're looking at the role of technology in Nigeria's electoral process. And to set the tone for our conversation, let's take this background report put together by our correspondent, Oyeyemi Ajayi.
What's the weather in Nigeria?
Currently, in Lagos, Nigeria, it's 76 degrees Fahrenheit with thunderstorms and mostly cloudy skies. Today, you can expect some sun and thunderstorms, with a high of 76 degrees and a low of 66 degrees.
The 21st century is referred to as the era of technological advancement, the period where technology takes over every strata of the society. And this is due to the fact that technology aids in the achievement of results faster than human efforts. All over the world, technology has proven its efficacy and efficiency in making the world a global village, to the extent that anyone or country yet to embrace it is seen to be lagging behind in advancement. In Nigeria, technology has crept in all areas to make work quite easier with faster results, as well as to curb corrupt excesses and chart a better course for the future. Talking about curbing excesses in Nigeria, results in the government's fight against corruption is a testimony which had helped the discovery of thousands of ghost workers who used to collect salaries monthly from the government's coffers. Technology has also played a role in curbing some dimensions of electoral malpractices in the country, which used to be the order of the day. The introduction of smart card, multiple fingerprints and multiple voting are now being easily detected. The recent decision by the electoral umpire, INEC, to go into full deployment of technology for the improvement of Nigeria's electoral process to many is long overdue, as it is believed that more still needs to be done in ensuring a truly free and fair election. Chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission INEC, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, in his view believes that electoral legal framework is removing some of the encumbrances in the full deployment of technology for the improvement of electoral process in Nigeria, especially result collation and management. On the other hand, many have faulted the fallibility of technology with the belief that it can be infiltrated with the purpose of still perpetrating crimes. As of today, some countries are shifting away from employing technology in some sensitive activities such as elections, citing issues of reliability. Now, what impact can technology have in our electoral process? To what extent should it be deployed? And how can it enhance the credibility of Nigeria's electoral process? These are questions guests on NTA's Good Morning Nigeria will be answering shortly.
All right, thank you there for that background report. And now we have guests here in the studio, and we also have guests in Kaduna, Maiduguri, and Ibadan, whom we hope to be joining in the course of the conversation. But first of all, let's introduce Oluole Osaze Uzi. Of course, he is the Director, Publicity and Voter Education, INEC. So you're welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
And we also have Esther Uzoma. Esther is an election observer. We're glad to have you again today.
Thank you very much.
And from Maiduguri studio, we are glad to have Ahmed Babawo Jahar, a member of the House of Representatives from Borno State. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Rhoda.
All right, gentlemen and of course lady, let's begin this discussion right away. Of course, we're looking at deploying technology for our electoral system. I'd like to begin with Osaze Uzi, who's with the INEC. When we talk about electronic voting, give us a sense of what we're talking about. What, before we begin to look at, its impact, whether we're ripe for it, whether we're not ripe for it, if we have to go, what is e-voting? What is an electronic voting? What does it entail step by step?
Thank you very much. In one sense, we can say that we've been working towards e-voting for quite a number of years, almost starting from the establishment of the commission, but in recent years it has been more accelerated. For you to have electronic voting, often people confuse online voting with electronic voting. All types of online voting is electronic, but not all electronic voting involves the use of the internet or online voting. For there to be electronic voting, it basically is a process where you introduce technology and electronics into the process of voting. But before you do that, why I say we've been building up towards that is because of, when you look at things, we started with the register of voters. That is already electronic. That register of voters contains, next to the register of voters, you have your permanent voters cards, which is also electronic. Before now we did manual. It's difficult to get an electronic voting without getting to the fundamentals. We say election is a process without getting to the fundamentals. The fundamentals is your register, it's electronic. Your permanent voters card is electronic. Wherever technology and electronics is into recognition of the card and the process of accreditation. We've done that. So there's several, like 4 components. The next one is now voting. There's voting, there's also transmission of results. But if you ask me specifically for electronic voting, it means the process of using technology to cast votes. Different from collation, different from transmission. But when we talk of electronic voting in our own circles, we talk of the whole process, the whole ecosystem. So the voting is that, okay, I want to vote for party X or Mr. Y or Chief this, you now vote electronically by means of a device. As opposed to mechanical, this is now use of technology, use of electronics to cast the vote, to express your choice in who you want to vote for.
So what you're saying, if I got you right, is we electronically we have gotten the registration of voters.
Correct.
We have a registered electronic voter. We have a voter's card that is electronic.
Correct.
The two areas left is casting your votes electronically and transmission of results electronically.
Collation
and transmission.
Yes.
All right.
Now, what is difficult about achieving that? Because you have made us to know that the plan for us to adopt e-voting started many years ago. Perhaps gradually we're trying to perfect it, if I understand what you're saying, because the other ones in terms of voter card and all of that, they have been done electronically.
Correct.
Right, and what is required of us to now graduate to real electronic voting is when we adopt e-voting, that will enable us to transmit, collate, and of course, show results. Now, what is that difficulty? What has become so cumbersome that we cannot graduate to that? Because several countries, even from Africa and Southeast Asia, have adopted this. So I was just discussing with Rhoda a short while ago that Britain just had an election 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
It was called for by Boris Johnson. Within a month, election has been held.
Yes.
Right, and if we were taking after such countries, being our colonial masters.
Yes.
Nigerians begin to wonder about this so much that it begins to, feel that is it because we cannot adapt to the challenges of today's world, or what? Why has this been so difficult?
How do I answer that now? First of all, let me just quickly point out that Britain does not do electronic voting. Britain does not do electronic voting. Many countries don't do electronic voting. Actually, many technologically advanced countries do not do electronic voting. You watched it. You watched the process of election in Britain. People went there and cast their votes manually. And then the ballots were taken to a central place, to a collation center. Results were not declared in polling units. They taken to a central place where they were physically counted. You saw that on TV. And so very often we make that mistake to think that...
But there was online voting.
There was no online voting.
No online voting?
No, ma'am. There was no online voting in the UK.
What about the US?
You had postal votes, early votes. In Britain, you can have postal votes, early votes. You can have voting by proxy in the UK. You have these things. So when you say the difficulty, first of all, the legal framework does not allow for electronic voting to start with.
The seamlessness of their voting process is what we're talking about.
Yes,
what
sir.
made it so seamless, that we don't hear of overvoting, we don't hear about ballot snatching, we don't hear about collation and all of that. Before you know it, the results are there.
Surprisingly, that has nothing to do with electronics. Not in the UK. A good example you used. It has nothing to do with electronics, actually. But you must look at the environment in which they operate. You must look at the politicians. You must look at the political class, how they operate. They have electoral commission. It does not conduct elections in the UK. Electoral commission does not conduct elections in the UK. So elections are conducted, good question, conducted by employees of local government. Councils conduct elections. So it's a totally different thing when you really want to come to talk about, when you compare, each country has a system probably suitable or that has arisen out of its history, its political history and things like that. So when you look at things in the UK, I'm not too sure the UK is the best example to use when you want to say about advancement in terms of technological drive for elections.
Okay, let's not... I'm trying to say this because part of the reasons why people are clamoring, or Nigerians are clamoring for electronic voting, is because of the peculiar terrain that we have and the kind of things that we see during elections. Yes. And we're saying if we are able to do electronic voting, probably this would eliminate to a very large extent some of the issues, the do or die affair that we see in our elections.
Indeed. I think a lot of people who have listened to, have read, seem to think that electronic voting cure everything. It's not a silver bullet, it doesn't cure everything. But yes, there's the interjection of technology will help in improving the process. In your background, you said how technology is pervasive, has become pervasive in all aspects of our lives. Fair enough. And generally, it will make our systems more efficient. It will generally remove human interference in the process. And people think, for example, it will help in terms of snatching of ballot boxes and things like that. Technology can do a lot for us, no doubt in that. But two things, and taking both your questions together, the legal regime does not permit for electronic voting for now. When it's amended, then probably we'll get there. But you can amend the law, and the environment is not quite ripe for it. For there to be electronic voting, like transmission of results, there has to be a robust infrastructure put in place. It will surprise you to know, for example, that you don't have coverage by service providers all over Nigeria. We don't have 100% coverage. We don't have 97% coverage all over Nigeria. So if you're going to do electronic online or internet voting, you will need coverage everywhere. Otherwise, you'll have a system where you might have a dual system, both electronic and a manual.
All right. We shall get to specifics, in the course of the conversation, so that we'll begin to appreciate much more the necessary steps that are required for us to take. Because it does seem that the democratization of politics in most post-colonial countries like Nigeria, or transitional countries, if you like Nigeria, has not been successful in terms of eliminating incidents of vote buying or other electoral malpractices. Let's come to Esther. You have been observing elections in this country, and of course you know exactly what the problems are. If you're asked to provide an advice as to what can be done to enhance our electoral process, with the experience you have had in the field, you saw vote buying, you saw all manner of electoral vices, in different locations across the country.
Now, I'll take it holistically. From my position as the co-convener, Nigerian Civil Society Situation Room, we interface with INEC regularly. We interface with voters, we interface with various stakeholders in the electoral process. And one thing stands out very clear. We are running a dysfunctional system. It's not just about INEC and electronic voting. Like Barrister Uzi said, it's not a silver bullet. It's not about, our systems don't ordinarily function. It's not as if you wake up and go to court, bring your case, and you get judgment and execute. Our systems, it's not as if you pay money to the man transporting you. It's not as if you have a contract to print ballot papers, they will deliver it on time as at when due. These things don't ordinarily work. You see, and so the tipping point, therefore, is when it comes to elections, we expect a paradise. It's not real. And so the problem we have, which reflects in our electoral process, is that our institutions are very weak and they're all politically smeared. You can predict, for instance, what an outcome of a matter depending on the political affiliation. And so we have our politics permeating and crippling all other institutions. Look at all these countries you mentioned. They have strong institutions that are stronger than the people occupying it. What I mean is that if you commit a wrong in some of these countries, the system will chew you out, deal with you. You go through it. But what we have here is that we have persons who are stronger, who determine whether IGP will arrest or not arrest. You understand what I mean? So the problem is it's not about electronic voting. No, it's not about that. What we must do, the average Nigerian will willingly, you don't need to advertise, will willingly sell his or her vote. You understand what I mean? They will canvass for it. Men, women, young, old. And I'm talking about even in the remotest of places. So what we are saying is this: what makes people want to sell their votes, for instance? What makes people always want to beat the system? Why? Is the average Nigerian concerned with crippling the system? It doesn't matter what you do. People, citizens, that lack of belief in the system on the part of citizens is our greatest problem. That's why our laws don't work. That's why police, that is the problem. So it's not about electronic voting.
But then, we have all of these issues, especially when you talk about our electoral system. Do you think in any way the electronic voting would help to curb some of these issues? Let's look at it from that direction.
Well, to the extent that we'll deal with money electronically, and you know, people don't joke with their money. The good book says wherever a man's wealth is, there his heart is. You know, if persons have argued that, well, if banking can be done, you withdraw money from everywhere and all that, as such, we can import a similar system, you know, into our voting system. But you know, the states, I have very strong doubts if the states actually wants our politics, our voting system, you know, to be free and fair. I have very strong doubts. This is personal. I think the state always wants to have a loophole for manipulation. The state, the Nigerian state. Yes. Because, you know, if you have a perfect system, it means whoever is in power, you know, it's not guaranteed. Power is not guaranteed.
Okay.
The possibility of the state manipulating outcomes. So I think that's a joker that the state always wants to reserve for itself. I believe so very strongly.
All right, Esther, we'll come back to you because you have raised some pertinent matters, you know, that needs to be further, you know, dissected for Nigerians to also have a better understanding of where you are coming from. But of course, you know that our topic this morning is dealing with the issue of introducing technology to see how we can eliminate or rather reduce, you know, the level of electoral malpractice that we've witnessed in this country since 1959. And let's go to Maiduguri, where we have Honorable Ahmed Babawo Jaha, a member of the House of Representatives from Borno State. Now, the historical trajectory of election in Nigeria is not separable, you know, from all the electoral vices we have mentioned in the course of this program. But as a politician, we'd like to get from you what your opinion should be with respect to the issue of introducing some more elements of technology in our electoral process. Of course, as Mr. Uzi told us here, we've started, you know, with the voter card, you know, card reader, which is an authenticating device. But this time around, the Nigerians seem to be asking for more of this technological deployment to see how we can correct the anomalies that we witness in our electoral process.
Yes, actually, I really commend the effort of Mr. Osaze speaking on behalf of INEC that UK doesn't use electronic voting. Yes, he is right. And I want to make it categorically. If at all we want to achieve this thing, we shouldn't be putting the cart before the horse. Nigeria is not yet matured for electronic or maybe online voting or something related to that. For instance, INEC, he can confirm to you beyond any reasonable doubt. They don't even have a register. They don't have a register in the sense that anything that is adulterated, that particular thing is not that thin. For instance, if you have a drink and that drink is mixed with water, it's not that drink. Maybe you can find a name to give it. So as far as I'm concerned, even INEC register is adulterated, where you have a single person holding 10 or 20 cards bearing his name, different names, but bearing his picture and everything. So to the best of my knowledge, we have a lot to do before we bring in technology to improve on our electoral process. At the same time, I want to ask, if INEC has run what we normally call AFIS, that is an automatic finger identification system, because I cannot see reason why I'm holding a card on appearance to the polling station after presenting my card, after identifying that this card belongs to that particular polling unit, and after identifying that that particular card belongs to me. And by the time I run my biometric, it's not going through, and you decline my accreditation. To me, we have a lot to do before introducing all these things. Thirdly, we must work on our attitude as politicians on one hand and as electorates on the other hand, because you can have a situation whereby because of our desperate nature, we want to be in the system by hook or crook, dead or alive. We go to any length to justify our election. And on the other hand, the electorates themselves, instead of them to conduct themselves accordingly, so that at the end of the day we can have a very credible election. Because it's not about choosing leaders, or it's not about declaring who is the loser or who is the winner of an election. But the integrity of the process is what actually matters, and is exactly what is going to give legitimacy to the person that has been elected by people, and is going to what is going to give legitimacy to the person that lost that particular election, so that he can have any confidence in the whole system. I will equally commend the effort of that woman. Actually, I'm impressed. She cited some examples that in Nigeria we have a lot to do. We have a lot to do. We better tell each other the truth. Electronic voting, doing that. UK is not doing electronic voting, but there has not been issues of election malpractices, issue of rigging, issue of thuggery on election days, and so on and so forth. Not because of anything, just because of the rationality of their behavior, their ability to conduct themselves accordingly, and their ability to be civil-minded, to be able to differentiate between what is good and bad, ugly and beautiful. So to the best of my knowledge, we have a lot to do with regards to our election process. Before even thinking of technology, these countries that have been using technology, they started their democracy about 200 or 300 centuries. So 200 or 300 years. So Nigeria should understand we are still maturing. Thank you.
Ahmed Jahad, thank you for your opening remarks, really. And you've spoken so well, especially when you talked about your fellow politicians, because it is one thing to understand that something is going the wrong way. Another is to, see how we can get out of it. Now, you say we're not matured, for any form of electronic voting or any further deployment of technology in our election. Can we understand you? Are we not matured in terms of what? Is it in terms of our behavioral pattern, or in terms of maybe backwardness or something, in terms of maybe lower coverage of satellite or something? So where at what point would you think that Nigeria is going to be matured for such advancement?
All. You have mentioned them all. Look at road. Only road, we don't have roads in Nigeria. Talk less of network. The network coverage is very limited to the extent, if you go to my village now, there is no GSM. So if you don't have a simple GSM to be able to communicate with other parts of the country, how can you have internet facility to be able to use internet services? So as far as I'm concerned, we are not matured enough to go into technological this thing, simply because of our behavior. And if you look at the cases of fraud, the cases of 419 all over the world, Nigerians are trying to breach some security processes simply because they want to achieve something. So if you bring this thing closer to them at this material time, because of our attitude and because of our behavior and because of the corrupt nature of our behavior, I don't think we can use that thing accordingly. Secondly, I want you to understand, Nigeria as a country, if today we can be fair to each other, we don't even have the supporting staff to run this electronic or technology for election. We don't have the knowledge. How many people can you invite now to come for an interview and they are computer literate in Nigeria, especially in our villages? And in Nigeria, we always believe that we want to do something in the same day. Look at elections in UK, US, and so on and so forth. It takes them nothing less than 1 week sometimes to do their election. But our own, the same day you do accreditation, the same day you do the voting, the same day you do tallying, the same day you do collection, the same day you declare election. Look at what banks did with the issue of BVN, and it's successful. It took them how many months or years to initiate the process and put it to table for Nigerians to understand. And now BVN has worked. Why can't INEC do the same thing? So that we can have a card just like ATM card we are using in our various banks. And if you want to conduct election, you start accreditation at least 1 week preceding the date of that particular election. so that you will be able to know and identify exactly the people that have been accredited accordingly, and they are ready to cast their vote legitimately on that particular election day, and allow them to cast their vote wherever they are in the country, in as much as you have the same card number, you have the same vote process, so that you can cast your vote. But in Nigeria, we all want to do something on the same Saturday. On Saturday, early in the morning, we start accreditation. By 12 o'clock, we start voting. By 6 o'clock, we must have declared who is the winner and who is the loser. Do we have the manpower to do so? Do we have the technology to do so? Are we ready to do it? Do we have the rationality to stand on one man, one vote? So we have a lot of issues. And for us, the politicians, because of the corrupt nature of the system, everybody is desperate to be there. So he can go to any length to cause confusion, fight everywhere to make sure that he win election. So we have a lot of issues. We shouldn't be putting the cart before the horse.
Thank you very much, Ahmed Jawa, Honorable Member of the House of Representatives from Borno State. We'll come back to you in the course of this conversation. Now, let's bring in Barrister Sazewzi. A lot of issues he's raised, and I know you'd want to clarify some of them. One of them is the fact that he thinks that we're not yet ripe for it. I know you said earlier that it's not a silver bullet, that will cure everything. But then he's also raised the issue of the fact that even with us having a voter's card that is electronic, having a register that is electronic, we still have issues that we're dealing with. Take, for instance, the issue of, I have a card, I have turned up at the voting polling unit. Yes, my card has been verified, but then my fingerprint isn't verified. So I have issues. That's one issue that he raised. I'd like you to also clarify that a lot of people still have. And then he's also talking about your register. I know you said there is a register, so please clarify that. He's saying there's no register. Does INEC have an electronic register?
Thank you. A lot of Honorable Jah, I think, is a member of the House of Reps, so he's a lawmaker. And what we have here, first of all, we go in accordance with the law. We do have an electronic register of voters. He didn't say we don't have a register. He said we don't have a register, but explained what he meant by that. And basically, my understanding of what he's saying is that it is adulterated, using his word. Okay. It's adulterated, so it's not, because of that, it's not authentic. But basically, we don't say that register is perfect. But it is a reasonable register. We think it's quite good. There must be lapses, and we have run AFIS, by the way, the automatic fingerprint identification system. We have run AFIS at different levels. So, and I think we had demonstrated, your correspondent was there in several of the demonstrations, where we showed how many people had been weeded off the register for multiple registration. Because although they have the names may change, but AFIS, their biometrics does not change. So with the biometrics, we're able to weed a lot of people. Almost 10% of those who turned out for registration in between 2011 and 2015 were weeded out because of double or multiple registration. So is it a perfect system? No, certainly not. But it's much, much better than the bogus register we used to have when we used to compile things manually.
The question that Kieran asked him, yes, I'd like to also ask you.
Okay.
Are we ripe for an electronic voting? Looking at what we have on ground, looking at how peculiar we are as a people, you've said it's not a silver bullet, but then, is it something we're ripe for? And if we're not, at what point do you think we would ever be ripe for
Well,
this?
that's the problem when you say that we're not ripe for it. At what point will we be ripe for it? We certainly have to do a lot more in terms of our backbone, infrastructural backbone, in terms of coverage of the whole country. We should get 99.9 or a higher percentage of coverage in terms of network. We hope that a time will come just about all communities. And people see technology has some problems, definitely. And that's what we're trying to do. It will solve a lot of problems, but we must be prepared for other challenges. Primary challenge will be security. Yes, we're trying to kick out a lot of vices, but as you can see, and even in the US, there's talk of interference, and part of the interference is, they said from Russia, they say from North Korea, and places like that. So we have to have a robust system put in place. So in theory, this thing is very practical. We will get there, but some fundamentals have to be in place first, and that's why we've done it systematically. That's why we're doing one thing after the other and introducing more technology goes. The card reader, it fails sometimes. Your GSM phone fails sometimes. You're here, you're calling somebody, says switch off, but it's not switched off.
Yes.
Now, we must put that in context. So the day you go, for example, you want to vote and your vote doesn't, maybe there's evidence that it should go and there's no evidence that it has gone, you'll be anxious. You go to the bank and you take your ATM. Sometimes it has dispensed money to you, whereas it has not done so. Now you have to understand that technology sometimes fails. So it's not a question of INEC we're working with some politicians to subvert the system. We have to understand that, and definitely we have to get the kind of technology that is suitable for us. To say we're not quite ready, it's not something we can answer yes or no, definitely like that. But I think some of those tentative steps have been taken, and there will be increased deployment of technology as we go on. But we must get the basics right.
Okay. Before we go to Esther, let's remain with you. Yes. We talked about coverage. Yes, I quite agree with you. But also good to note that Nigeria has satellites, in the orbit that are not, adequately deployed, to do certain things. But that's a topic for another day. But it's to let you know that the infrastructure we're talking about, we've just started too, as well. Just as INEC has started with the voter card and the card reader. Card reader is a portable electronic authentication device, and it uses a cryptographic technology, which means it's fast and efficient. Can we have other gadgets similar to card reader that could assist Nigerians or assist INEC to kind of voting, without necessarily queuing up and going to, well, after biometrics, yes, without wasting time. You just have it not like the card reader. You vote and it clicks and you move, and the moment it clicks, it registers somewhere within the units that you are covering. Within perhaps maybe you say some square kilometers, right? Or maybe there's certain polling units that if you vote with this gadget, it registers somewhere immediately. It's the possibility.
Yeah, it's possible. You have devices like that already, and some countries are using those kind of devices. Yes, technology can do a lot. Anything you want, technology is a problem solver. So give it a problem, get the proper hardware and software, it will solve the problem. Yes, so you have devices like that already. The card reader has a lot more potential than what we are using it for. But we must do everything in accordance with our laws. And you see, let's go back to why we think technology should be deployed. Human interference, violence, bribery of voters. Now, if you have that kind of device, it doesn't stop thuggery, because people can come and take that device. They don't have to scatter polling. All they have to do is just take that device physically. So you must still, if the mentality doesn't change, you're still going to have problems with that.
But then that's why we're also still saying people should be able to vote from their homes.
No, that's a different thing. That's a further stage even. That is now online internet voting.
But then look at the card reader, for example. Since people know that, okay, the card reader allows you to be able to vote. I don't know, but I don't want to believe that from reports that I've also gotten that the rate card readers, yes, have been stolen, but it's minimal. Really? Is it okay? Should I ask you, have you had incidences of card readers being stolen? Is it rampant?
Well, we've had a disturbing number of card readers being destroyed, being stolen, being smashed, and not being used. So we've had all that. Don't forget, before the general elections, a store containing card readers was burnt in Anambra, in some states. So yes, that is there. But if it's now becomes central, you don't use card reader for voting. If you become central to voting, for example, potentially it will attract these miscreants. It will attract these people who want to subvert the system. But you can have one device. Answering both of you, can have one device that will identify the card, identify the voter, that will accredit and will transmit results electronically. As you're voting, yes, it's registering somewhere. It's possible.
Where will you transmit it?
Well, to a server created for it, because it has to be. Oh, of course, there are servers. There are different type of servers. I'm not talking about.
I think that's the point. There are different types.
There are different types of servers. So right, if it's configured to receive such if it's configured that way, just like the card reader, it is configured to read The PVCs,
all right.
right.
So these PVCs, were they transmitted to any server at all?
No.
And you just concluded the elections.
Your PVCs, you said? You don't transmit
Yes,
No,
PVCs.
I mean the votes.
No, we are talking about a new device.
We didn't use PVCs for voting. You know that?
The permanent voters card.
Yes.
That people vote.
You used to vote. You need card readers to transmit.
It was used to vote. He's saying it was used to vote, but it was not used to transmit.
No, the question I asked him was
Really?
whether we can have other devices that could transmit, not card reader, right? That's what I want to tell you. If it's introduced into the system, whether we have, he said yes, we have such devices. But
the Nigerian states, that thing called state has an interest in Nigerian affairs. And until the interest of the state is beyond persons occupying political spaces, we will not solve the problem.
Okay.
All right, I'll come back to you because I know the questions you're wanting to ask us as
Yes,
now, but then,
how did you know?
I know the questions you're wanting to ask him, but then let's go to Kaduna first. Let's go to Kaduna where we have joining us Kabiru Mato, a political scientist. We've had him several times on Good Morning Nigeria. Kabiru Mato, thank you very much for joining us this morning. It's indeed our pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria. So you've been listening to our guest. We've been on for about approximately almost about 30 minutes now. Let's get your take on this.
Well, thank you very much. I think it's a double-edged sword. Either way you look at it, the important issue here has to do with the willingness, or the attitude of Nigerians in general and the political class in particular. Voting throughout the world, and just like the Director of Communications there rightly said, in most of advanced capitalist social formations are actually not conducted electronically, as Nigerians are clamoring for it now. But it has become an attitude of Nigerians to continue to ask for the next level at every given opportunity, shying away from perhaps their inability to make good of the present circumstances that they find themselves in. Yes, technology helps virtually every aspect of human life, but as far as elections are concerned, I think the important thing that we need to do really is that yes, we have achieved some progress in the area of the permanent voters card, the voter register, which is continuously being updated, as when due by the Independent National Electoral Commission. These two are essential. But a situation where you insist that you have to have the process completely becoming electronic, in my view, will become rather very counterproductive, not just because of the obvious problems that have been identified by my co-discussants there in the studio, such as coverage, power, etc., etc. The most important issue that I think stands between Nigeria and free, fair, and credible democratic elections is not necessarily about the excessive interest. And just like the election observer there is harping on the idea that the state is interested. Of course, the state will be interested, just like any other, individual or groups within the Nigerian polity and globally too. So the state cannot be insulated completely or said not to have any interest, in the electoral process. It should, of course. But I think what is important is that whether you are in government or in outside of government, the willingness to subordinate yourself to the wishes of electorate, in my view, forms the kernel of discussion. So whether you have electronic voting system or the hybrid that we have in this country today, as long as you can have machines doing the, used for the election and so many things, and these machines will also be subjected to manipulations by those who desire to manipulate them. So the desperation to win political office, in my view, is also responsible for the inability to get this. And I think we cannot shy away from the fact that what is most essential is that we need to begin to refine and redefine our purposes of politics and democracy and elections. You cannot have democracy without election that is credible. Election, therefore, is the foundation of democracy. And as long as, again, the perquisites of office are so attractive. The political enterprise in Nigeria, like people kept saying, is the most profitable enterprise that anybody can go into. So as long as this attraction is there, the desperation on the part of politicians and different interest groups to acquire or to access political positions will continue to be there, and therefore whatever system, whether electronic, whether a hybrid, whether a non-electronic system that is brought in place will obviously be manipulated against the system. And I think that's what Nigerians really need to continue to remember, that it is the individual citizen that decides what happens to him or her. And in this case, therefore, we must attune our minds to the fact that it is crucial that we have a different attitude. We need to be our brother's keepers in the sense that we will subject ourselves and subordinate ourselves to the wishes of the majority. That's pure and simple. So all the grammar and the different issues that are being propped up at every occasion, in my view, will not go anywhere in resolving this very endemic social crisis that you have in this country. And after all, between 1999 and the last election, we have observed series of problems, and it's not a process that is one of that you can start today and say it is done completely. It's a process that is gotten incrementally. We will get to a stage probably when elections will be free, fair, and credible. States like the United States of America that have done elections for a very long period of time are still battling with these problems of electoral irregularity sometimes. So it is a social issue that, in my view, will be addressed more by the willingness of people to change attitudes and redefine the meaning and focus of politics, democracy, and elections. Otherwise, you use machines, you use electronics, go the manual way, will not change any issue.
All right, thank you, Professor Kabir Maltu, for your initial submission. Well, I was going to ask you another question, but let me come back to Abuja and come to you much later in the course of the program, because you have given us a lay down of the possibilities and some other, encumbrances and difficulties. You're calling it a social problem that must be solved, but I would like you also to come in with the idea of what can be done technologically with respect to elections. That's when we return to you for the second round of your contribution. For now, let's bring in Esther one more time. You see, part of what Kabir Mato said reflected, what you have been harping on this morning with respect to attitude, with respect to the people in power, with respect to weak institutions, bigger people and weak institutions that may never allow any kind of law to uphold. So, in your opinion, our program this morning is on technology deployment. Is there nothing technology could do, to see how we can correct some of the anomalies that come with the electoral process?
Well, actually, there's so much technology can do. Whether it will, cure the disease is a different thing. Technology can do so much. All right, but technology is a system that depends on other functional systems. You can't just say let there be electronic voting and there is suddenly it's perfect. Let me tell you, the human being is a powerful entity. The human being is a powerful entity. If America, with all their advancement, suffered interference from Russia, hello, look at Nigeria. Right now, we are living in a system that ordinary telephones are hacked comfortably. People hack ordinary telephones, send text messages as if you are the one send telephones. Okay, now Nigeria, this is earth. This is not paradise. It is the function of government to ensure that systems are functional. Okay, that you say, oh, stay within the line. The government ensures that people stay within the line, through the coercive forces of states and all that. We can have technology, but what happens when people violate, laws regarding technology? What do?
What will you do, for instance? How does overvoting occur? When we have 20 voters registered in a polling unit, suddenly 100 people voted, and they say we are cancelling it. How does it happen? With all you bring your card reader, you are verified, you are identified, and then out of 100 that are registered in this place, broad daylight, 100 registered, 700 people voted. You understand what I mean? It is that thing. But technology can't cure that. Technology cannot, and the National Assembly cannot legislate on, patriotism. They cannot legislate on good behavior. They can't even legislate love for Nigeria. Because the political, let me tell you, the greatest problem is the political class. They keep on balkanizing us and disillusioning us, from the Nigerian state. And so, when we are disillusioned, you are Hausa, you are Yoruba, you are Igbo, you are Efik. So we also do things in that line. We break the laws in that line. We do not see Nigeria as modern Nigeria. So it's not, the technology is not the magic. It's not the silver bullet like, by Saze said. That is not it. Until somebody evokes the love for Nigeria, because people protect the things they love. Then if we do that, believe me, you can vote with a sheet of paper and everybody will believe it. Why do you think we don't adopt technology in our village meetings and then it is still free and fair? Come to voting in Igbo land. You dare not. Wow! Because we believe, when people believe what they are doing, they also protect it. But because it is their thing. It is this Nigerian thing. Then let's.
In essence, what you're trying to say is that, look, the problem is not the deployment of technology.
No, not at all.
It is us as a people.
Oh, definitely.
And that until we are able to deal with that,
yes,
then technology is more or less not what we need.
There's no magic in technology.
All right, let's quickly go to our Maiduguri Network Center where we have where we'll still have Honorable Ahmed Babawo Jaha. Honorable, let's look at the legislative aspect of this. I know your view to this is that, look, there are issues we have to deal with before we start talking about voting electronically. But then all of these can still not happen if the legislative aspect is not dealt with.
Yes, you are right. Naturally, we are representing our constituents in various 360 constituencies in the House of Representatives and 109 senatorial districts in the Senate part of the National Assembly. So there is no way we can legislate on something that we believe is not feasible. Feasible in the sense that if you look at, you have mentioned, and other my co-discussants in this issue emphasized on, we need to put some things in place before we bring in technology. But that's the truth of the matter. I told you, I'm representing Chibok, Goza, and Damboa Federal Constituency. As I'm talking to you, substantial number of my constituents are not living in their various electoral wards. So, and even in the local government headquarters, there are no networks. It's only in Chibok I have some level of MTN. If you come to Damboa, there is a partial, Airtel. But in Goza, it's a complete blackout. We are neither in Cameroon or in Nigerian Republic as far as the network is concerned. So you don't even have a GSM network that can be established anywhere and be properly managed. But if you said you don't have all these things on ground, and you want to bring a technology that can use all this infrastructure for it to succeed, it's just like, as I said earlier, you are putting the cart before the horse. We want to see what is feasible, what is workable, what can work in our in our constituency. Maybe in terms of people having a very conducive atmosphere to vote. So as far as we are concerned, we are lawmakers, but we are equally sensitive to what actually our people can do and succeed.
All right, thank you, Honorable Ahmed Babawo Jahar, a member of the House of Representatives from Borno State. It's been nice talking to you this morning. We've been able to gather one or two things from you as a practicing politician. Thank you very much indeed for reaching us all the way from Maiduguri. Now, we are still on Good Morning Nigeria, and at this point it's time to take a short break. When we return, the conversation continues, and we are going to also introduce one of our guests in Ibadan. Do stay with us.
All right, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria. We still have our guest here with us in the studio, and we're looking at the role of technology in Nigeria's electoral process. All right, so let's see if we can take the tweets, Kirian, before we get back to our guest. But then, a very big thank you to every one of you who've sent in your tweets via Twitter handle at NTAGMN. Continue to send them in. The conversation is still on. You can tweet at us at our Twitter handle at NTAGMN. If you have questions for our guest, you have comments, you have contributions, send them via Twitter handle. The first one is from Law Advocacy. It says technology will go a long way in improving our elections, but it needs sensitization and orientation before deployment.
Now, from Adejumo Paul Olubumi, technology goes a long way to prevent electoral fraud and the stress of standing for long hours to vote.
Akeju Olagbaju says that technology is already playing a greater role in our electoral system. However, we need to pay more attention to our voting system or e-voting, where it's widely abused and manipulated.
Now, Reggie Afiz Abidemi, honestly, this is the best method to adopt in Nigeria so that we will curb election malpractice. And PMB, that's President Buhari, needs to assent electoral bill. God bless Nigeria.
Adejumo Paul Olubumi says, I hope to see a situation where our ATM cards or national identity cards or our phones can be used to vote anywhere we are within or outside the country. This will equally reduce court cases and that distract politicians from governance.
And from Ibrahim Mudua, he said, it's the right time to fully deploy technology in the conduct of our election, from voting to transmission of results and eventually announcement. Technology is the only way to curb malpractice and election violence. INEC should start scheming for the electronic voting for 2023.
And Chris Simeon says that technology plays a very vital role in electoral process. It speeds up the process and minimizes manipulation.
Now, Francis Obi says technology is long overdue in Nigeria electoral process. According to the INEC chairman during the presidential election tribunals on the use of electronic voters card, Britain held the election this month. It was so smooth.
And this one is from Josh at Don's Majosh. He says technology presents good situations, a solution to electoral process in Nigeria, but the adoption can be challenging when we're still battling with power supply. Many will be marginalized because of technology, economic and social divides that is happening within us.
Delegate Solomon, the solutions to electoral problems risks lies in the use of geographic information systems to conduct boundary delimitation and the establishment of polling stations, the use of sophisticated databases to maintain the voter registry, the use of mobile technology for the transmission of election results, and the use of electronic voting machines for citizens to cast their ballots.
Steve Bond 07 says, if one can open an account via the phone, get an ATM card within hours, why can't voting be done with the phone? This will even reduce violence and ballot snatching. Nigerians shouldn't suffer unnecessarily anymore.
Titus Monday Knock, he says the best moment will come to this country when you sit in your comfort zone and enter your biometrics on an electoral portal and on your phone to vote. Ballot box snatching, killings, thuggery, and other political vices will be drastically reduced.
Ali Ahmed says we cannot escape the evolution of technology in our lives, but the security issues of it is our concern in the electoral process. We cannot allow hackers to elect our leaders.
All right, Dr. Anayo, this is simple. Development is directly proportional to good conduct during election.
And let me just take this final one. It's from Chidi 0075. It says, concerning the role of technology in elections, it's not online voting, but being able to vote the way we use the ATM machine with our PVC. Well, those are the tweets that we have now. You can continue to still be a part of the conversation, just as I said earlier. Send in your tweets via Twitter handle at NTAGMN. I was going to ask Barrister Saze Uzi, looking at the cost of elections, part of the reason why some people are clamoring for electronic voting, will it in any way reduce the cost of our elections?
Certainly not on the short run. On the contrary, the cost of elections will go up astronomically, at least in getting the infrastructure in place and getting the equipment in place and things like that, in training people on the use of those equipments, and cost of transmission, it will be very expensive, no doubt about that. But on the long term, it may be cost effective, but for the initial investments, you have to invest a lot in that.
And also part of the...
And trust Nigerians.
Part of the problem we have is that we depend 99.9% on foreign technology. We have not taken time to develop indigenous technology. This is a part of the problems that we have generally, in fact, in all sectors of our national life. Because the moment you are an importer of a very vital element in your developmental process, definitely you're going to spend some money. Now let's return to Kaduna. Professor Kabir Mato, we listened to your first comment, and understand that you are most concerned about the citizens, the behavioral pattern of citizens, the do or die affair of people during politics. But one thing is certain: every problem has a solution that could be profiled. In the case of elections in Nigeria, we have not gotten it right. Not at all. We have not gotten it right. Now, what in your opinion can be done with the use of technology? Let's think in that direction, because as Osada even told us, that technology can do a lot. But the point is, we may not have the legal framework for now, right? We may not be ripe, so to speak, in terms of lack of infrastructure and what have you. But there should be a solution to our electoral process, and technology can do something. So in your opinion, what can technology do?
Well, thank you very much. Before technology does anything, there are certain basic foundations that have to be laid. What can we do as a nation, as a people, to reduce, the very high profile that characterizes elective offices in this country? The transition is very clear from state of near penury or poverty to affluence. As an aspirant or someone or a candidate, your economic status may not be anything to write home about. But by the time you are elected into no matter what level within the tenure, you become excessively very rich. Now this defines a lot of things. This defines the character of politics that we run in this country, and therefore it makes the electoral process a matter of life and death. Look, people should always bear in mind that politics, and especially elections, like is being said, it's also war, but war without bloodshed. In our case, we spill a lot of blood in the process. So before technology will function, my point of view is that there is a need to actually do certain things and put certain situations in their right perspectives. One is reduce the attraction as far as, it's no longer a call to service. People do not necessarily aspire to represent their respective constituencies, for the purposes of service, but rather to be served. This is one fundamental area. Secondly also is the manner in which the entire political scenery within the Nigerian nation seems to be operated. Why is it that it is the winner taking everything? So if you are a candidate and you contest an election, if you win everything. If you lose everything. Now this again makes the electoral process a cutthroat competition, whereby nobody desires to, and politicians will do anything under the sun in order for them to attain political victory. People are complaining about vote buying, etc., etc. It's a new lexicon in our political vocabulary. I don't know what that means. Is it, the money that politicians, spend in the process of wooing people vote for them, or it's some money that it's giving at the point of election, so that because Nigerians, a lot of them, especially in the rural areas, apparently seem to be tired by sending people to either Kaduna or Abuja or wherever, and then by the time they send them, that's the last time they see them until when they come back, seeking for mandate again. So it's better for them, that's the psychology, it's better for them to collect the little that they will collect during election, and then because they know soon after the election it is bye-bye until you come again. So these are some of the issues that, in my view, will continue to precipitate against attainment of free, fair and credible polls in this country. We talk about technology as if this technology is given, as if it is something that is abstract. It is actually a part of an advancement in the way human management or the way human beings conduct their activities. You can have all the computers, you can have everything, but as long as the mind is not clean, it's not clear on what it wants to do, it does not want to do what is right, then of course technology is deployed negatively in this case. It is garbage in, garbage out. We shouldn't continue to insist on this issue. I mean, two things, like I did say, are already very clear. One is that you have a voter register. Second, you have a permanent voter's card. So let's keep moving along that line. By the time, perhaps, we get to a stage where we have attitudinally, redirected ourselves, to a situation that we will respect one another, will respect the views of, the electorate, then we'll start talking about technology. But for now, I think it is important really to address, and that's one of the things, like I keep saying, that the Justice Owais panel did recommend to the government and agency. There must be, in our constitution, inserted a kind of proportionate representation. Where when you contest an election and you lose, it's not a winner takes all thing. If you do that, you reduce the attraction. Now, secondly, also, we need to look at what are these perquisites of office that actually make people shed blood. A lot of blood in the respective countries simply because they desire to represent their respective constituencies. These are some of the critical questions that, in my view, we need to do. And we must deploy a lot of resources as federal and state government in order to campaign. What is required really, a lot of the problems that we have in this country boils down to attitude. And if you get this attitude right, then of course a lot of things would be solved. Otherwise, we will continue to jump from one problem to the other. Today, people are talking about electronic voting. That electronic voting will not resolve our problem, will not solve, like it's said by my co-discussants there. Electronic voting will not stop political violence. Barrister Uzi did say that, is it Anambra or in Enugu State, that a whole store that was filled with card reader was set ablaze. Now, what would electronic voting really do to stop this type of political thuggery, etc., etc.? So we must get first thing first. We must get things right before we jump. Otherwise we'll be shifting blame, and at the end of the day, we will waste our precious time. Instead of achieving progress in the way we do our elections, we'll continue to romanticize and make a lot of, speak a lot of English, and at the end of the day, we are down the drain.
All right, thank you, Kabiru Malto. I think, gentlemen and lady, the issue here is the role of technology in the nation's electoral process. We understand that the attitude of Nigerians when it comes to election is a different ball game, different kettle of fish. Some people it's a business time. Some people it's time to get rich. In Nigeria, politics is a profession. People tell you, I'm now a politician. We understand all that, but we are thinking of going forward, what we can do. The world is moving. The world is moving. It's not static. And we need to, move along with latest development globally. Well, I was trying to raise one issue here. I asked Uzi a short while ago on a question on the issue of card reader, which is configured specifically to achieve an aim, which it does. And I asked him, is it a possibility to have any other cryptographic technology that can even be applied, even for a start from cities? Start from cities to put it into practice. Why I'm saying this because from 1959, we have never had a credible election. I mean, it is on record. How many years today? Each time we get into an electoral cycle, it is like a war is coming. It's like a war. You can feel it. You can feel it in the air. And at the end of the day, after the election, of course, you are an election observer. So you can tell us more.
You see, Kyrian, the truth of the matter is this, the need for technology in this evolving world is a given. We cannot afford to live in a world that does not embrace technology. Okay? That's number one. Now, second, that's a given. Now, what I am saying specifically for me is that, granted that, we simply have to move on with the times. Okay? We need technology in our elections. It will enhance the process. However, we will achieve it better, all right, if we can have a society that is functional. If we stop jeopardizing our part, yes, that is it. Because we can't just bring technology and it will clear abuse to cut others, for instance.
Going that to that. So yes. The question Kyrian is saying is there no way technology can cure this attitude? Is there no way it can reduce some of this attitude?
Exactly.
No, how can technology enhance obedience to court orders, for instance? How can technology... that is it, because you're missing this. These things are reflected in our electoral processes. It's not an isolated thing. That's what I'm saying. Everything we do as a country boils down, it reflects in our election. That's why INEC is having such a hard time. They bring card reader today, tomorrow people manipulate things. That is why they're having the problem. We are progressively disingenuous, confronting, we're always trying to beat the system because we don't believe. But if we believe me, we don't even need all that technology.
As you have rightly said, in other countries, some people also try to manipulate the system, right? Like we talked about a U.S. election, manipulated by, Russia, as the case may be.
No, but Karen, let's get it right. That manipulation we're talking about in the U.S. elections, from what I can recall, I don't think it's electronically, but then the manipulation went on really mostly during the campaign. That manipulation during the campaign itself.
That is where people's minds are molded. That is where people's minds are molded. That is why they make you decide one thing or another. That is very critical.
That's where it starts, yes. It is
hacking. You see, so because, let me tell you, something as simple as, look at my point of view, something as simple as obedience to court order. If I tell you that it fuels thuggery, the thug knows that if I kill INEC person today, nothing will happen. He knows. Because it's somebody, that is it now.
Now,
he knows that if he takes ballot box in the midst of people, he knows that he's protected. That nothing will happen. So why would he jeopardize the system?
And when a device is provided, whereby the
thug... He will yank it off now. The thug will steal it.
But if the thug steals it...
And all of us will be there.
Now, if the thug steals a device meant for voting, already those who have voted on that device, their voting has been recorded. So you can take it away.
So once you replace it, who will believe in that result?
You replace it as you replace voter card readers as well. We are trying to look for a method,
so the salvation is not in technology. The salvation is in functional. For instance, let me tell you what happened in Bayelsa. The federal government deployed 200 gunboats, helicopters, to deliver ballot papers to places that were flooded. And I say, why would we put such effort to give them medicine, tent, and food? Do that to a people, you invoke their belief in Nigerian system. Why must it be the ballot paper? Because it is an elitist. It fuels a political class. And here we are, because a political class, technology. It is the agenda of a political class now. It's elitist.
Well, Osazozi,
let's
get your take. Do you think that because all of you seem to be on one issue, and that's the fact that, until we're able to handle the human angle, our social behavior, this is not a silver bullet. Probably we're not yet right for it. You don't think in any way that if we deploy technology, it might even help our behavior? Because look at the BVN, for example. With all of that, it has reduced some level of, some of the issues that we have in terms of our, banking system. So you don't think in our electoral process at all, if technology is deployed further, yes, we have gone, we have achieved some level, You don't think it will help?
You know, the point is this. Why are we discussing this? If you're discussing it because you think technology will solve our electoral problems, no, it will not. It will not. But, as Esther says, it's a given. We must get there. Yeah. We must continue to build on the technological basis which we have established. We must continue to build with it. I don't know whether we're ripe or we're not ripe for it. I think we're headed that way, and we'll have to accelerate the process of getting there. That will not change people's mentality and worldview overnight, but we'll have to do both together at the same time. While working on the mindsets, while working on people, we'll still have to deploy more technology in our process.
All right, thank you very much, Osaze. Very quickly, just before we go, we've been trying to link up with our Ibadan Network Center. We've had some technical challenges all the while. Earlier on during the program, we introduced a guest having to join us from Ibadan. But very quickly, just before we call it a day, Shola Babatola is of the Transition Monitoring Group. He's in our Ibadan studio. I would like you to just tie up the knots. You've been listening to all of our guests, whether you've been around all the while listening to our guests. Let's get your take.
Okay, quickly, let me try to correct that impression. My name is Olushola Babalola, not Shola Babashola. Anyway, thank you so much for having me on the program. So I'm not going to be different from the earlier speakers, but then I think we should have this understanding. When we are talking about application of technology on electoral process, election is a cycle. We focus on election day activities, but we need to talk about how we can apply technology to pre-election and post-election activity as well. How do we use, how do we use technology to target, some of the election stakeholders? Take, for example, the political party, the electorate. How do we pass the right message to them? Yes, we have quite a number of social media, channels that we can, actually apply, to pass message, to some of these stakeholders. Take, for example, the electorate, to let them know what are the processes that are involved on election day, what are the do's and don'ts, what are the other messages that INEC really want to pass to people. Like, take for example, if there is a change in legislation, people should be able to know that this is the new legislation as far as election is concerned. Again, when we consider the post-election activities, in terms of managing big data, I think technology will play a very good role there as well. In terms of artificial intelligence as well, these are the things we can actually, apply technology for, rather than focusing on election day. Yes, we have done a lot in terms of applying technology to our electoral process in Nigeria. INEC has come with a lot of initiative, with a lot of ideas that actually, strengthen, the electoral process in a way or the other. Like, take for example, we talk about affix. All these ones were not there before, and to a very large extent, this has, help in a way. People can go to INEC online now and probably get some certain information, like the issue of voter register that we are talking about. Before now, we cannot boast of a decent voter register, but we have what is we can call a near perfect register. Now we need to really consolidate on that and begin to see how we can actually, apply technology further, to strengthen the electoral process, not necessarily on election day. Like Barrister Osase said, in UK they don't do e-voting. We shouldn't limit this discussion to e-voting alone, and that is more reason why I appreciate the fact that people are talking from different angles. Barrister Osase are talking about the fact that you cannot use technology to stop bribery, what we call transactional politics in Nigeria, what we are seeing in terms of vote buying and vote selling, nowadays. But we need to look at it holistically. We need to look at the pre-election activities. How do we apply technology, to help pass the right message to different stakeholders, to different public? Then we need to look at post-election activities too, to see how we can use election to deal with large data during the election. At the same time, how do we use technology in the areas of artificial intelligence? What a million human beings cannot do in 3 days, technology can do it in a matter of hours. So by the time we begin to look at application of technology in our electoral system, then we begin to appreciate the essence of technology in our electoral system.
He has made a different point here, which of course they should